All right, welcome back to the Getting It Wrong podcast, where we create a safe space for getting it wrong because getting it wrong is the first step to getting it right. I'm Gabrielle,
I'm Morgan.
and we are so happy that you guys have joined us today. We are going to be talking about something super interesting today. Um, we're going to be talking about two things that are interesting today. But first, we're going to recap on what we talked about our last episode. What was our last episode, Morgan?
So we talked about health trends that we've
Uh,
noticed in 2024. We talked about the water health trend and how people were trying to figure out how much water to drink. We talked about things that we noticed that were like a yay or nay when it came to health trends. I think we agreed to drink water. We agreed to take care of your gut health. We agreed that exercising more was a good one. Abstaining from drinking was a yay-ish, depending on the person. I think there were a couple more. Which ones did you have?
I honestly do not remember.
Fair
Um,
enough. Go back and watch it, guys.
exactly.
See what you think is a yay or a nay. See if you agree with us. But yeah, I feel like I'm still on the same. I still feel the same about them for the most part.
Oh, we did talk
Keep
about
drinking that
run
water.
clubs.
I keep skipping the run. No, actually, I was gonna go Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Mm-hmm.
it was canceled, or I got the dates mixed up. So it's not gonna be until this following Tuesday, and I
Okay.
think on Saturday. So I
Okay.
still might go. Heavy on
Okay.
might.
Heavy on the mind. I just come to the realization that I don't want to run outside when it's 95 degrees. So I probably will
Not
not
mad at
be
that.
attending run clubs anytime within the next month.
Oh,
But
girl. Mm-hmm.
I have been in the gym though. I've still been on my walking, still been on my running, lifting weights now. So
Love it.
I'll get to the run club when I get to the run club. Okay. But it's still a yay for me.
Still a yay. Okay.
Still a
Okay.
yay.
All right. So our next topic, um, I saw an article that was kind of interesting, and it's talking about how it was from Psychology Today. It was talking about how jobs seem to be failing when it comes to interviews. So the question was, are job interviews failing us? Meaning, are they effective at finding the appropriate candidate for the jobs? Can I think
What do you
it
think?
depends. So what do you think, Gabby?
I agree. I feel like there's no, it's like what I feel like all jobs interviews are different, first of all. I don't think I've ever been to a job interview that was exactly like the other,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest. So I feel like it's kind of difficult, but I definitely feel like that there are strategies that you can use to know if the job is right for you. I feel like if people focus more a little bit more on if it's a right fit for them instead
Yeah.
of focusing on getting the job, I feel like the conversation could be a little bit different.
Yeah. And I think in addition to that, it's all kind of performative, like in the sense that no everybody's showing their best selves. The job is going to present their best self, the candidate is going to present their best self. And how do you really know that you are getting a good fit just based off of an interview alone? Or even a few interviews. That I feel like the answer is no. So I think this article kind of goes into that a little bit. So first off, they mentioned that 91% of what determines a good candidate is missed in an interview. And I agree because, like, when you're in an interview, for example, they bring up like a chef. They basically, and they probably don't do this for like all chefs, but this is just like a metaphor in a sense. But like a chef is like looking at a piece of paper and deciding if the candidate is appropriate for that position and it's a chef. Like, you should be trying the food. And obviously they don't actually do this for like that specific career field, but it's the same idea that you're not going to be able to see the performance, how someone performs based off of looking at a piece of paper or even speaking to them in an interview, you know? So there's that aspect. Then they also mentioned that when you're in an interview and you're screening someone, or when they're screening you, there's no like perfect question that can really give you an idea of how good that candidate is. Like, everybody already knows the perfect answer to what's your greatest strength and weakness. Like, we
Right.
all we all have practiced and rehearsed it. So we all know that you're only gonna get the best version of most people.
But I do have something to add to that. As someone who's
Mhm.
been on both sides, someone who has interviewed people, and as someone who has gone on interviews, um, I feel like the best thing you can look for in a candidate is someone who is eager and willing to learn. I feel like
Mhm.
that's the number one thing to look for in a candidate, because a majority of the time things can be taught on a job. Majority of that time things are
Yeah.
taught, even if the person is skilled, you will still have to teach them things on the job that fit your company. So I feel like if a person shows up and has shown a history of winning, has shown a history of being eager to learn, a history of doing things for whatever previous company or business that they had, I'm like, this is the type of person that I want on my team. This is the type of person that I know, even if they don't know how to do it, they'll figure out how to do it, you know? I feel like that's how you
Yeah.
create a good team. Someone who wants to do it, who's eager to do it, and who has shown a history of being able to get things done. I mean, I
That
feel
no,
like it
that's
all boils down to that.
so it's like how willing someone is and eager someone is like a vast majority of it, in your opinion.
Well, the third and key component is someone who has also shown a history of being able
Okay.
to get things done. Because if someone just being eager on the job interview, of course, someone is eager to get some money. You know what I'm saying? So you can't just go off of that. They have to have all of those components.
Okay. So it's like a perfect, like, I don't know, equal parts, a perfect balance of it all, in a sense. Okay. Well, they also go on to say that in addition to trying to like get the perfect question that doesn't necessarily always work, they also try to find a good cultural fit, or like someone that blends in well with the rest of their group, for example. And the problem with that is that it can kind of leave room for error, because in a sense they're like trying to find someone that fits with their group, but that could end up leaving room for like biases. So, you're trying to find someone that has a similar personality, and it's like, okay, in a sense you're almost just finding someone that looks, not looks, but acts and has the same interests and has the same experience as you, and that can lead to like discrimination, and in a sense.
And, and I also feel like it leads to not a lot of innovation, um, and
That's
boringness. I feel like you
mhm.
need someone who's different, who can shake things up a little bit, who can bring in new ideas, um,
Yeah.
instead of finding someone who already thinks the same and does the same. Like, I feel like you
Hmm.
need someone who can shake it up a little bit.
That's a great point, because if you have that diversity, it helps like make the group better as a whole. Having
Mm-hmm.
different perspectives definitely makes for a better, work environment for sure. Um, so because we were talking about the biases, it kind of made me think of this specific case. I think I saw it on like TikTok or something. So this guy, his name is Dwight Jackson. He sued this hotel because he had been applying to this hotel. He had loads of experience. He was a great candidate for it, but he was applying to the job. And then when he changed his name, to from Dwight Jackson to, I think it was John Jabrowski or something of that nature, which is clearly
Is it Jewish?
I don't know if it's Jew. I just know that like that is typically not a Black person's name.
Sure.
So he changed his name and they immediately called him in for an interview with the exact same credentials, the exact same resume, just a different name. So they called him in for the interview and he ended up suing for discrimination. And I believe he won as well.
Because obviously they just saw the name and was like,
yeah.
Dwight denied.
Denied. But yeah, I can definitely see not only do people try and find the right fit in that sense, but it can again lead to discrimination. Obviously, there are going to be people that only want people that look like them in the workforce. Obviously. However, you know, I think that this is a point where the job interviews are failing and they need to kind of find other ways to make sure that they're getting the right candidates and make sure that they're not being biased as well.
I definitely agree. For sure. And I definitely feel like some of the things that I suggested previously, like those 3 things that you can focus on, if we have anyone who is hiring listening to this podcast, that focusing more on, of course, their qualifications, of course, if you feel like they're eager to do the job, but also like if they have those things and they show a history of being able to get things done, like why wouldn't you want this person on your team just because they don't look the same? Like you can, like if your company doesn't have the ability to work with people who don't look exactly the same as everyone else, like that's an issue. Like we live in a diverse world that's becoming more diverse as the years go on. You see it in the people around you. I'm constantly interacting with people who don't speak the same language as me. And even in our music in America, it's definitely more like global, where our artists are interacting with other artists from all different parts of the world. Like you have to branch out, you have to diversify, or you're going to be left in the dust.
100%.
Okay. Yes. And speaking of not wanting to stay the same and diversify, I wanted to bring up a book that I've been reading recently. It's called Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola. This book is basically about the wild woman archetype. And we've talked about archetypes on our podcast before, the different archetypes, the 7 feminine archetypes. And go back and listen to that episode if you're interested in learning about those. Before I get into it, I do kind of want to define what an archetype is a little bit if you're not familiar with that. And Carl Jung, I believe he's a psychologist, and he defines the archetypes as the models of distinct aspects of identity and personality that play a role in influencing human behavior. And today, we're talking about the wild woman archetype that I believe should be influencing our behavior a little bit more. So this wild woman archetype is basically the instinctual nature of a woman, the nature that's full of passion, creativity, innate power, and also the ability to chart our own path in this world that is designed to suppress us and confine us. I do have a question for you. When you think of a wild woman, what comes to mind?
Crazy hair, disheveled, not put together. Wild as in not ladylike. The the quote unquote sense of feminine and ladylike. That's what it sounds like.
Right. So you think of like basically a crazy, wild woman that's shunned from society.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, especially with the wolf analogy.
Right. But that's not really what the wild woman is. it's a small aspect. I shouldn't say small, it's just another
Hmm.
aspect of what women are. Because you know how we all have these different archetypes within us. The wild woman is a part of that. And I'm trying to think in our previous episodes about the feminine archetypes, like what archetype we talked about would the wild woman like fit into? Because the wild woman is like creative and I'm
Hmm.
like, maybe she would fit like the mystical archetype. But honestly, I feel like the wild woman is kind of being
Maybe a
able to
mixture.
be, yeah, like a mixture, being able to be
Hmm.
whichever archetype is necessary for her to do what she needs to do instinctually.
Hmm.
So that's what I think personally.
Mm. Okay.
And but you know, society and other constructs that we live under, they attempt to civilize us and
Yeah.
muffle the wild woman part of us that we have in our body. But that wild woman archetype, that energy, the wild woman energy is what women need to create what they need and what you envision in your life instead of just going with the flow. So I wanted to, in order to bring this point home and basically help you all understand where I'm coming from with the
Hmm.
wild woman archetype, I did want to share a story that I read in the book. This book is basically a compilation of like fairy tales and stories because
Mm.
stories are basically what people use to pass information and ideas down
Yeah.
from generation to generation. And I definitely want to pass this energy down. So hopefully by me sharing this story, I can share some of this energy with you all.
Oh, how lovely. I'm
So
ready.
this, okay. You're like, give it to me.
Yes.
So the story I wanted to share with you all is the Bluebeard story from the book. It's basically a fairy tale, but the premise of this story is kind of like meeting our inner predator.
Mm.
So listen.
Okay.
So this story is about a young, naive woman, and this male suitor is looking for someone to marry. And he's charming her and his sisters, and he has this big blue beard.
Hmm.
And so while he's charming this girl and her sisters, they all like him because he's charming, right?
Hmm.
But two of the sisters are just like, nah, there's just something weird about him and this blue beard. Like something is just not
Mm.
sitting right with us. Like we just gonna let it go.
Right.
But excuse me. But the one of the sisters, she's like, but he's so charming and sophisticated
Mm.
and elegant. Like there's no way, like the blue beard is just like a little quirk. Like there's no way that,
Mm.
you know, someone who's this charming and elegant could be a bad person, right?
Okay.
So he basically convinces the young girl, the young beautiful girl to marry him.
Mm.
And they're living in his castle. And he tells her, so he's going away on a trip, right? He gives her this ring of keys in his big castle.
Hmm.
And he tells her that you can invite your family over, you can do whatever you want. Just don't use this one key that's on this key ring. And she's like, okay, sure, fine, whatever. So he goes away. She invites her sisters over, and they're having a grand old time in this big castle. And they like made a game out of figuring out what key goes to which door in the big castle. And they're having a good
Hmm.
time. And they basically figured out all the doors except for they come across one door, and it's a weird door. And they're like,
Hmm.
this key must go to this door. But
Okay.
she knows that we're not supposed to use this key.
Right.
But you know, curious young girls, they
Uh,
figure it out. They go do it anyway. So she gets the key, she puts it in this door, she opens it, and the room is full of skeletons.
oh.
Basically, skeletons of his old past wives.
Oh no.
And she's, of course, she's so frightened, so scared. she closed the door as fast as she can to like locks it, and like she looks
Mhm.
down at the key, and the key is like the key is bleeding. There's like blood all over the key. And she's
Mhm.
so scared. She like tries to wipe it on her gown, wipe it everywhere, but the key just keeps bleeding. Her dress is covered in blood. She tries to go to the kitchen and clean up, and it's just not working. And it's just blood everywhere. And her husband comes home,
Of course.
of course. So the husband comes home, excuse me. When he comes home, he sees the blood, and he sees that she's tried or has gone into the room that he told her not to. So
Right.
basically, secrets out, right? Secrets out. And
Right.
so the sisters are gone by this time.
Oh,
Um, yeah, the sisters are gone. So he decides that he's going to kill her, and she's
right.
gonna be with the other skeletons that were behind the door.
Mm.
So luckily, when the sisters left and went to go tell like their brothers and everything
Okay.
that was going on, and like they came back and were able to save her before he was able to kill her and put her in the other room with all the other skeletons. But that story resonated with me because the reason for this story was to show that being naive and like being naive and succumbing to a predator kind of kills off your creativity as a woman. And I
Mhm.
know so many people, so many women who have gone through similar situations, probably not as extreme, as this
Mhm.
situation and this story that was written in the book, but definitely similar situations to where they have fallen into a
Mhm.
situation because of being charmed by someone, and the situation not being what it seemed.
Yeah.
And this woman basically losing herself in that situation, killing off her creativity, killing off her soul,
Yeah.
killing off that wild feminine energy within her. And
Oh.
the moral of the story was basically like you have to face the skeletons in your closet. As the woman, she was trying to like clean the key, get the blood off the key, wipe it on her dress, trying to get rid of the evidence that she even saw anything that was happening. But at the
Yeah.
end, she couldn't cover it up. It was blood everywhere. She had to face it. She had to face it and basically change the situation. Um,
Mhm.
you can be naive and think and try to pretend like you're in this safe situation, but you do have to use your wild feminine energy, basically use your intuition, and be able to discern, if situations are good for you and if they're not good for you. And if you do
Yeah.
make a certain decision that is not good for you, you do have to face it and make
Yeah.
the next best decision. Like we always sing that Frozen song,
We do.
do the next right
This is
thing.
it's so good. It's just so it's a word. It's a word. The next right thing. Because it just it speaks to people that deal with anxiety. If you have like a whole list of like a whole list of things you have to do and it's making you overwhelmed and you're trying to figure out like what's next, what do I do? How do I get from under this pile of tasks or whatever? Like figuring out your next right thing to do sometimes is helpful.
Yes, and
And
I really,
I love that
I'm
story.
sorry.
Oh, well, I love the point of the story you were making because not allowing things like that to change who you are is so important. It's like you're not going to come out of it unscathed, but having the courage and the boldness to still like to heal like okay, when I say this I think of like situations where people have been vulnerable and let's
Mm-hmm.
say you trusted somebody you realize you shouldn't have trusted just like in this
Mm-hmm.
scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next thing or you've been a pushover, for example. Let's say you've been a
Mm-hmm.
pushover and you realize you finally get the courage to start telling people no when it's important to say no. I always think like you can't stay stuck in the no phase. You have to come out of it and heal and get to the point where you can say no when you need to say no, but you're okay with saying yes if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea of getting past the things that hurt you and then being healed to the point where you can say yes again. You can marry somebody even if they have a funny looking beard again, because you know the difference now and you've grown. I think that's
True.
important.
But I think the Bluebeard in this story was representing like poison or
Mm.
something like that. Like that was
Okay,
supposed
so
to be
not the
like the
beard.
omen in the story. But
Yeah,
I totally
yeah.
get what you're saying. And yeah, that's
So,
basically, yeah, the point of the story is like being able to come out of those situations. Like if you
mhm.
were vulnerable in a situation, like you said, pushover, knowing that they are not the creator and master of your life, you are. God is.
Right,
So you are
right.
able to change and make different decisions at any point in time that would be best for you.
Come
You know,
on, you better preach.
I mean, seriously, you can change your mind at any time if once
Hmm.
you realize that something is not for you. And those skeletons that are in your closet, like you said, you can't, yes, you have to be able to be strong and get out of that closet. But at the same time, you have to basically become one with your skeletons and nurture them and love them and realize that, okay, this happened, right? I am scathed. I might be scathed from this
Hmm.
situation, but
Hmm.
I can still open myself up and love again or
Right.
do whatever I wanted to do again because now I'm doing it with knowledge. Now I'm doing it with experience.
Hmm.
Um, and once you claim your life force back, you are able to blossom. But and I really did enjoy that story. I'm not finished with this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Okay.
But I just had to share that story because it stuck with me, and I thought that it might help someone else who have gone through a similar situation. And I wanted to share this because I do feel like this energy is needed in modern society.
Yeah.
Um, just because the older we get, I see just so many people's light. And even my own, it just becomes more of a fight to keep the spark alive. It
Absolutely.
does. It gets drowned out by life, society,
Hmm.
expectations of others. But I remember, even as a young girl, I could see it in adults. And I used to pray to God at night that I'm like, God, like, I pray that no matter how old I get, like I never lose like this feeling that I have. Like I never want to lose like my passion and like my dreams.
Mm.
And I thank God for keeping me going and because not me being able to keep my spark alive. And I feel like as long as you believe in God, you believe in yourself and you never give up, even if you feel like your spark is gone, I feel like it can be lit again.
Oh, come
So
on.
it
You better
can. It's
preach.
it honestly, that's
No,
I
but that's
really do
real.
feel that way. And I feel like there's women who see other people who have this spark and feel some type of way. And you shouldn't feel that way because that spark is still inside of you. You should use
Mhm.
these women that you see and use these stories that you hear to ignite the fire of the wild woman within you. So
100%.
and I did have another question. Like, do you
Mhm.
have anyone in your life not your wife, do you have anyone in your life who you can think of that's like a wild woman?
Mhm. Ooh, I feel like,
I was gonna say, or maybe not in your life, but like someone, maybe like maybe a famous person or anybody.
that I can think of. I know I had like I have a old supervisor that I feel like, even though she was the kindest, like sweetest person, she knew how to put her foot down too. And I feel like that's kind of what I associate with it. It's like you can still be kind and vulnerable, but you know when enough is enough. So
Yes,
yeah,
I
that's
love
what it
those
makes
type
me
of
think of.
people.
Hmm.
The first person that came to mind when I thought of a wild woman was Maya Angelou.
Really?
Like
What made
I've
you think of
always been
her?
obsessed with Maya Angelou because she's truly a wild woman. She's so smart. She's intelligent, but she's also well spoken and free,
Hmm.
and she's forged her own path in this life despite no matter what she's been through. Like she worked in restaurants, she was a stripper, she's a world-renowned artist. I mean, world-renowned writer and poet. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm.
who like like she created a name for herself in this world just by being a wild woman, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's like looking at her speak, listen to her speak. I'm like, I'm pretty sure she can be the sweetest woman in the world, but I'm
Right.
pretty sure she knows, and I've seen her in interviews, she knows how to put her foot down at the same time.
Come
It's
on.
that just, I'm obsessed. Maya Angelou, wild woman.